This is a Culture Inject production.
Welcome back to Dollhouse, Awaken, a Patreon exclusive presented by the Podcast and made possible by the generous support of our Patreon friends, Precious, Heather, and Berger. I'm one of your hosts, Taheg, and joining me today is Heather.
Yes, and I'm Patreon Heather, so isn't that nice? It's kind of like Inception, huh?
Pateception?
Pateception? I don't know. Dollhouse Awaken is where we discuss Joss Whedon's underappreciated masterpiece, Dollhouse. Taheg, Kelly, and myself has seen the series, but Gina hasn't. But Gina couldn't make it today, so we have a big sad. She's been asleep,
she fell asleep.
So this will be her first time watching the series in its entirety. For the synopsis, A Spy in the House of Love, it aired April 10th, 2009. The working title of this piece was For Engagements, which becomes clear once you get into it. And when the storyline is when a traitor is discovered inside the dollhouse, Echo and Sierra are programmed as spy hunters to uncover the culprit. Meanwhile, Ballard receives surprising news from Mellie, and Adelle harbors a secret.
Dirty secrets. The cast and crew for this episode is relatively familiar. You'll know all these names. Eliza Dushku as Echo, Harry Lennox as Boyd Langton, Fran Kranz as Topher Brink, friend of the podcast Tarmo Penneget as Paul Ballard, Enver Jokai as Victor, Deachan Lackman as Sierra, Olivia Wilmans as Adelle DeWitt, Reed Diamond as Lawrence Dominic, and Miracle Laurie as Mellie November. We have a few guest stars this week. Valerie Cruz as Selena Ramirez, Liza Lapira as Ivy,
love her.
Timmy Cho as Nicodin, sorry if I got either of those wrong. The episode was written by Andrew Chambliss, again, sorry if I got that wrong, and directed by David Solomon, which I'm pretty sure I got right.
Go ahead, Ty. I gave you this one because it's about British slang, so I'm interested to see if you agree.
I was quite glad you gave me this one because I did really like this little thing. We have a few interesting kind of tidbits and continuity behind the scenes things. Victor's persona for the Miss Lonelyheart engagement is Roger. As a verb, to Roger in British slang is roughly equivalent as the American to hump in a sexual sense. A dog may Roger one's leg. Given that Victor's actual client is very British, the persona's name may be something of an in-joke. Speaking as the resident Brit in the podcast, that was literally the first thing I thought when I heard his name, so I have to assume that was a joke. I mean, he's Roger that Rogers. It writes itself.
So funny. When Miss Saito is entering the NSA building, the information displayed on the security screen when her stolen ID card is swiped lists her name as A. Saito. The nameplate on her office on a scene later says Sato, matching the credits above.
According to Eliza Dushku, on the day she wore her dominatrix outfit, she hired a coffee truck for the cast and crew and told them they could choose between free coffee or her whip. Eliza, as the dominatrix, received huge publicity and the clip was used extensively in advertisements for the show. This scene alone is often credited with earning the Dollhouse its second season.
That is so sad.
You have to wonder, what show they thought they were making if just seeing that scene, like, oh, that's what the show's about.
Right? Well, you remember when we did the last show and we talked, well, actually, were you on that one? Or was it just me and Kelly and Gina, where we talked about the lace thigh highs?
No, I wasn't on that episode, but I did listen to it, and I meant to say, I think that was kind of the point. It was such a stereotypical kind of sexy co-ed outfit. I have to assume that was just kind of, not maybe making a joke, but I have to assume his intent was to be as stereotypical as possible, so that the moment you see her, yep, that guy she's going to meet is clearly a perv. We all know exactly who that teacher is because that's why she's dressed like that.
Yeah, and the dominatrix thing, I mean, I'm glad it got a second season for the dominatrix outfit if that's what it is, but it's just so over the top. But I mean, that's my inner feminist coming out. I'm just like, really? But clearly Eliza was having a ball in that outfit. So
yeah, definitely.
I mean, if she wants to dress like that, then I don't have a problem with it. Be who you are.
I mean, when Ramirez and Lonely Hearts are walking out and she whips her on the way out, it's too funny.
Sometimes it is about the pain.
Yes. I love that line.
I thought that, as I said earlier before we started recording, I thought this was one of the episodes that I thought was weak. And turns out it isn't. I actually find, except for a couple of places, I find it really compelling. I find it surprising. I find the dialogue, especially between our characters, there's 2 or 3 tete-a-tetes in here that are fantastic. It's so just razor sharp and emotional, and I think the ending was really interesting.
I think it kind of is. I don't really remember this episode. Like I remember this was an episode, and I remember the title, but I couldn't remember what had happened in this episode.
Same.
And now
Same.
I don't really know why, because there's so many huge things happen in this episode, and there's so many amazing, like the scene quite early on between Saunders and Langton Boyd is like it's so brilliant. It's seeing two of the real strongest actors in the series, like the strongest solo character actors in the series, just like clearly having a ball and just like loving the characters they are. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I think when that happens after, because we've already covered the dominatrix part, and Dominic has been put in charge by Adelle, and then that whole thing with Boyd and Adelle, or Boyd and Saunders goes down, and he wants to make sure Echo's okay. He's checking on her really hard, and it's all about her privacy to Dr. Saunders, and then they have the whole discussion about pimping the dolls out, if it were. And, that she argues they're offering a valuable service to people that are repressed. And she says having a desire you are afraid or ashamed of expressing can be terribly debilitating. Look at how many of same-sex engagements we're called for even today. Now, this show is more than 10 years old. So, I mean, I really think, again, this type of observation was really ahead of its time. I think we were in the throes of gay rights really coming to a head, at least here in America. And so, I mean, I think, touching on that subject was super timely and remains timely.
I mean, he just has a habit of kind of writing stuff that it's about timeless struggles, like being who you are and being with who you want to be with. Sadly, somehow that's still an issue for some people, to such an extent that they have to go behind closed doors. And like, again, I love that just the whole kind of soliloquy about that, and dark designs and everything. And it's such a beautiful speech, because it's still just as true now as it ever was. And she delivers it so perfectly. You can feel her emotion in there. And like, by this point, we have a fairly low opinion of the Dollhouse. Like, we've seen the bad things they do, and we saw a French lady last week,
right,
in the sort of
the
French
cabaret.
outfit. I mean, yes, cabaret. I couldn't think of the word cabaret there. Thank you. We saw Tango in her cabaret outfit last week. Then this week we have, we've literally just come off the scene with the dominatrix.
And Saunders goes as far to say that dolls are never submissives. They're never put in positions with this type of, with the S&M thing, I guess, that they're in the position to be hurt. So, and of course Boyd scoffs at it and is like, well, that sounds like, corporate babble, company line
Party
stuff.
line.
So, yeah. I want to talk about it later, but there's a point when they've imprinted Echo later as the agent, and she's questioning Saunders, and I'm like, why did none of us catch this, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what you mean. We got a bit started. Like, we between the things that have just happened, kind of in the previous episode, we've got quite a low opinion of the Dollhouse, and I'm seeing Paul freaking out, and like, this is how far it goes. Like, we generally have quite a bad opinion right now, and then hearing Saunders, it's like she's got a point. While it is a fairly grubby establishment, like, there's some people who that is their only recourse. They have no other way to be who they are and be with the people they want to be with. So it's like, I mean, what they're doing is technically wrong, I suppose, but to a lot of people, it's like a lifeline. So it's like, it's good. I think it's quite good to have that balance in the story. Like, yes, they are, it is a murder brothel, but I suppose they are helping some people. Like,
maybe? I mean, it's a tightrope for, people talk about how they, everyone says how they volunteer, and, you hope they know what they're told and what they're getting into and what they get when they walk free. But one of the questions that came into my mind during this, especially with Miss Lonely Hearts and Roger, was, can a doll hold a long-term imprint? Is that possible, or would it just fall apart? And does anyone ever really get out? The attic sure is discussed a lot with these dolls. Like, is the 5 years and you walk really just crap, and all of them end up in the attic? At this point in the show, you don't know. Later, you see what's going on, but
even then, it's like, I do have to wonder, between kind of attic-worthy trespasses, gunplay on the events, possible diseases, people lying like we saw on the second episode. Like, they say it's 5 years and you're done. How many people actually live through that 5 years? What is the percentage of, for lack of a better word, successful graduates of the Dollhouse? I'd be willing to bet it's around kind of 70%, maybe.
I mean, Dominic was, and now, from this episode, we know he's clearly worried about Echo's evolution, but he was wanting to attic her, or anybody else for that matter, for the slightest thing. For the slightest thing. And he was there for 3 years. They talk about how long he was at the Dollhouse. So, but at any rate, Topher finds a little memory chip that can override or modify the imprints on the dolls, and tells Boyd, in a roundabout way, because he thinks Boyd's the spy, that they have a spy. Adelle is gone. And
I absolutely love that whole scene with Boyd and Topher. It was
telling me this
just, yeah, like absolute peak Topher,
right? Absolute
peak Boyd. He's like kind of bemused, but he's like, okay, it's very nice of you. Right. Why are you telling me this?
Right.
Just perfect.
So he thinking Boyd is the spy, he gives him a reason to opt out, which of course Boyd is like, it's not me. What are you talking about? And so Dominic gets told, he flips, and they imprint Sierra with their best secret agent parts, as they put it. And so then Sierra, puts on her best, F me pumps and a wig, and, goes to town, goes to the NSA of all places to go get the files out on whoever the mole is. So,
yeah, for all our kind of non-American listeners, which is probably just me.
Oh, yeah.
What exactly does the NSA do, and what is their part of kind of... Their name comes up in a lot of spy shows, but I'm not 100% sure what they actually do.
So in America, we have a number of what they call intelligence agencies, and it's all called the IC community, intelligence community. And the NSA, there's the CIA, which has been around since it was the OSS since World War II, I think. Like, Julia Child used to be in the OSS. I'm not kidding.
I didn't know that. That's amazing. How has there not been a movie made of that?
Yeah. Well, they mention it in Julia and Julia that she was at the OSS, but it was only briefly touched on. And I don't think she was an actual field agent. I think she just worked there. But the CIA, as asymmetrical threats grew, the CIA gave rise to some other agencies, the NSA being one of them, which is the National Security Agency, which tends to lean more forward on terrorism stuff and stuff like that. And you also have the FBI, and even to me, it's not clear whose territory is what. FBI tends to be internal, NSA can be both, CIA can be both.
They apparently have some pretty cool tech, but can be fooled by someone that looks vaguely like the person. Like, I don't understand how that security guard was like, okay, this is Sato/Saito that we're meant to be meeting. That's clearly not her, just a person in a similar wig. Sure, you can go through.
I like the little folder, like, laminated thing that's clear, that has digital printing on it. Like,
yeah, that was like so cool. I want one.
Yeah, but that's not cost effective.
What if it's reusable? Like a little mini, like a foldable iPad. I would absolutely have a foldable iPad. It looks like something
you put your 7th grade report in. So she goes in, gets what after a big fight, she gets extracted. Meanwhile, Echo has decided to wander up to Topher and ask him to imprint her, which if I was Topher, I'd be like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's red flags right there. Like, are you even supposed to know about the imprinting? Is that a thing you're supposed to talk about? Have we not got some mental block on that so you can't be like, yo, give me superpowers? But she just walked in and did it, and he was like, okay.
Well, and the other part of it is, they spend all this time having small talk in front of the dolls about the dolls, like the dolls aren't there. And I'm just kind of like, sooner or later, they're going to start picking up on it. They know they've had problems with Echo remembering stuff and going off mission and blah, blah, blah. But they're still like, blah, 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 dollhouse inside information in front of all the dolls. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. So what do you think of him imprinting Echo while Sierra's still out in the field? Like, what's your thoughts on how she was running her op?
I thought I really loved the conversations she was having with all the different kind of staff members. So I was a far bigger fan of that than I was of the kind of cheap Mission Impossible knockoff that Deacon was doing. That was like, my suspension of disbelief was strained to absolute breaking point by that. Meanwhile, the sort of was that Lie to Me, that show where about the guy that's really good at reading body language? Kind of that's going on in the Dollhouse. I was like, yes, more of this, please. And so that interview with her and Topher was so funny. I know, I'm pretty sure I said that, but Topher was on fire this week.
This is a great episode for him. And what it reminded me of, this is another device that Joss likes to use, and it's a really funny device, is just sitting people down and switching through their conversations while they're talking to somebody interviewing them. So it really, Boyd's part was so funny.
He just has this sort of real deadpan, dry humor sometimes that's so unexpected, but just always gets me right on the funny bone. But yeah, like that, and I like that we got a little bit more of Ivy this week, who's a very underutilized character.
I love Ivy. And I hate how Topher treats her. Like, it drives me crazy how Topher treats her. Like, it's super problematic.
Well, I think it's quite good in that respect, because it does show that, he is this super genius. He's really funny and he's kind of this lovable goof. But he clearly has some issues that he needs. Like, he should be called up to HR for a lot of the stuff that he does. Nothing more so than the way he treats Ivy.
I go back and forth with Eliza. I love Eliza. She's one of the most beautiful women on the planet. She got this role. The roles she played in this one are great, and I'm impressed with her acting. Not so much with Caroline. Like, I don't feel her presence in Caroline, but she was really good as this, I guess, FBI agent or specialist into body language and tells and stuff like that. So it was easier for me to watch her. And like I said earlier, clearly she loved being the dominatrix. So, and I think when she feels her role, she's there. You know what I mean?
But yeah, like, that the whole body language reading interview montage was fantastic. And I hadn't thought of it until he realised it, but Joss does love that kind of pieced together interview thing. And the thing is, like, much like all of his little tips and tricks that he likes to throw at people, it's a great device. So I understand why he sort of keeps going back to that well. Like, just the kind of the final scene where she reveals the traitor.
Right.
She absolutely nailed that.
Right.
It's like the Sherlock Holmes moment. You can go when he's like, oh, there's a bit of body reading, a bit of psychology, and I threw a bit of Sherlock Holmes in there. You can really see that in that final moment. It was absolute Holmes.
So while this is going on, they have imprinted Mellie, and they jump on the timeline. We haven't mentioned that yet. They jump around in the timeline, and it's almost, it's not Ran, if you've ever watched Kurosawa, where they do it. Ran is an incident from seven different people's perspective.
That's Rashomon.
Oh, Rashomon, sorry.
Ran is the King Lear one.
Got it. But this jumps, it goes through each of the doll's engagements, and then jumps back to start at the next one, so that while all of this stuff is going on at the same time, you're all roughly in the same place on the timeline. From 4 different views, right? You've got Victor as Roger on his engagement, Sierra in the NSA, you've got Echo interrogating people within the Dollhouse, and you've got Mellie, who we're about to talk about, who has been sent to go pick back up on Paul. This scene, my stomach almost fell out of my body when she switched. She goes in, she's 100% Mellie, and starts trying to help him and take a shower, and they get into the bedroom, and November turns on. And I have never been so shocked in my life. I did not expect that to happen right then. And Tammo is so good. Like, you can just see him fall apart and come back together again. Like, holy crap. The rabbit hole is deep.
It's a 3-act play in one freaking scene. Right. It's amazing. Right.
And before that, you're really feeling, Mellie's a doll, and you feel bad for her because of how crazy Paul looks. Like, he knows he looks bananas. Yeah. And then it's all blown away by her reveal. Like, I found her reveal more shocking. It wasn't as shocking as her being the sleeper in Man on the Street, but it was more shocking than Caroline revealing to Ballard. Like, this one, I never expected her to just go hard like that. I thought they were going to keep her cards, and they were. Like, obviously, this is the spy that had programmed her to speak to Paul.
Which means we can now going back to Man on the Streets. We were discussing at the time whether we thought Carolyn breaking in, being like, I'm from inside the doll's house. I'm a spy. I remember when we were talking about that episode, we were debating whether or not that was a legitimate spy or just someone or just the dollhouse trying to mess with Paul. Obviously, we now know, it's a few episodes later, right. We can talk about it now. That was a legitimate kind of break-in.
To the point that she's even repeating lines that Caroline said, or Echo said, like, pleasure is our business, but it's not our purpose. And this body is not imprinted with information that you don't need or you can't have. And at the end, when you can tell she's coming to the end of her spiel, and Paul's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "You can't tell her. You cannot tell Mellie. The only reason she exists is because of you." And I'm just like, holy, like, can you imagine being Paul?
Yeah, that was a brutal line.
It's so brutal and heartbreaking.
But I'd forgotten that was in this episode. Like, I knew that I knew there was a reveal moment, but I'd forgotten it was this episode. So I was just watching that scene, and I was like, you think you're making it? She's just done. Like, oh shit, she just said it. What the hell? Like, it properly hits you, even though we know it's going to happen. We know it has to happen eventually. But just the way they drop it is just so good. And then I've got to say, like, hands up to Tammo, he was brilliant in that scene. Like, even when he's not talking, just through his expressions, you can see everything Paul's feeling, and it hurts to see it.
They both were just ricocheting off each other. The timing, the dialogue, just good, just so good. I don't know why Miracle Laurie doesn't work more. She's amazing.
I know, like she has literally everything she needs to be a freaking star.
Is amazing, and the chops she shows between her and November, and I don't remember the name of her actual character from Needs, but the way she switches up between those roles, like, just amazing, masterclass. All right, so on to Miss Lonely Hearts. So we see
Roger the doll.
We see Roger getting dropped off, and he brings the roses to the Golden Girl, right? And we're like, what is going on here? And he gives her the roses, and out through the back door he goes. And where does he go, Taheg?
He goes... he goes, do it. Yeah, he sneaks away in his fancy car. I don't remember what car that is, but I seem to recall it's a super, super rare fancy.
It's like a Ferrari, right? I think it's a Ferrari.
No, I was watching this car show a while ago, and I think I can't remember the name, but it's a super, super rare. There's only about 10 of them made in the world.
So it's rarer than a Ferrari, huh?
Way rarer, yeah. But yeah, the moment I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. Who would have the kind of money to just have that sitting in their fake house? And he gets up to the building, he walks in, Miss Lonely Hearts, where are you? Boom, out walks Adelle. And it's like, suddenly everything you've thought just goes out the window. Now,
obviously, because we've watched this before, I knew that was coming, but it's still, the ruse and the ball she has to do that. And then you think about, speaking of HR, she's breaking every rule there is, right?
Yeah.
Like, putting her position, it kind of addresses almost, sexual harassment or sexual misconduct on the job, because that's clearly what this is.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's a brilliant scene. It's played really well, and it's like, it's a really great episode for Adelle. Like, I think it's the most screen time she's had in ages. Like, really great arc. You see her more human side. You see her kind of letting off. You see her as something other than this, like, untouchable robot boss. But at the same time, you have to think, like, that is a gross misuse of power. Like, that's borderline the same as what the handler was doing with Sierra. She just took more steps.
Well,
and has been doing it longer.
Well, and she wasn't having sex with an unimprinted doll. So technically, whatever imprint Victor had was compliant. Not compliant. That's not the word I'm looking for. It was consensual. But is it really? I mean, is it really? I don't know. It's questionable, especially since she.
I mean, she programmed the character for him, and she made he consented, but he only consented because she programmed him to consent.
Yeah, so then they have this silly fencing match where none of them, they're not wearing protection. I mean, it's kind of a kick-ass scene, but I keep worrying one of them's going to get their eyes poked out.
But I did say, when I was watching that, I was like, it would be period appropriate. I really hope we get to see her do some fencing in the Nevers. It'd be quite cool if she's just this badass matriarch that runs the orphanage, and someone breaks in and she just skewers them.
I love Olivia Williams, and her in the role of Adelle is one of my favorite things about this show. She's so cold and put together, and the great thing about this episode is you see her more vulnerable side, and you see, while she's having these conversations as Victor as Roger, it's so meta after they have the fencing match, and then of course they're in bed and they're talking about running away together. This is why I bring up, can a doll hold an imprint, right? Because it's probably literally impossible that they can't. The reality of them running away is he's not a person. He's an illusion, and he doesn't know it, which is really bad. Side question from the fencing match: who had bigger guns, Victor or Adelle? Adelle was cut, man.
She was, yeah. She's that's clearly not the first time she's held a sword. She knew what she was doing. She was clearly there may not be an HR department at the Dollhouse. There's definitely a gym. She was swole.
So after they have this conversation and they're having a good time and they're working it out in the sack, then of course Adelle becomes melancholy and realizing her position and how she can be happy right now, but it's really just a ruse. And it's really, it's a little stifling, I felt like, for her, because then she just completely like hysterically falls apart, right? Like, it's not just sobbing like, oh, poor me. It's like crying Jag. Like, this is coming out of me at this velocity and I can't stop it.
This show is just so, like, there's nothing simple about this show. Everything is so freaking layered. Like, you're watching that scene and you're like, oh, yeah, it's so sad because she's crying. It's like, weighing the whole scene, I was like, do you feel sorry for her? Should you feel sorry for her? It's like, but like you feel so much for her, even though she is sort of doing the wrong thing and she's crying because she knows she has to sort of give all this up. It's like, does she have real feelings for Victor? Does she have it for Roger?
Of course she does. She built him. Of course she does.
Yeah.
He is, I guarantee you, the reminiscence, maybe with some modifications, of someone she used to love. I'm absolutely sure of it.
Do you also think there's a real Roger somewhere in the past?
Yeah, not him exactly, but enough like him that it's even one step creepier, if you will. And I think we, as humans, we've all had these unrequited loves that will never, for whatever reason, will never happen, or did happen.
Damn you, Amber Rose Reaver.
Or did happen, and you effed it up. You know what I mean?
That's so much worse.
Yeah. And I don't know what's going on here, but clearly, this guy was built not as just a profile of someone that she would like, not like a dating, but someone she either used to know or couldn't have or something like that. And I think when she does fall apart, it is as much for her untenable situation at her job and the fact that he's not real, but that he's the one that got away.
And she has to,
or she couldn't have,
let him get away again.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's so much of this is so tragic. He was asking these questions about loving someone that isn't really there 10 years before Westworld.
Yeah.
Which asked the same questions, Yeah.
I mean, I've often said that Westworld is just BSG with a cowboy, well, Battlestar Galactica with a cowboy skin. But the more I watch Dollhouse, the more I realise just how much they've taken from this show.
I mean, I think you're right. I think BSG has huge influence on Westworld. But the early, the first season especially, when we don't know who Billy becomes, and his obsession with Dolores, it's like the bookend to how the Dollhouse is starting with these people, that in Adele's relationship with Roger, that how can you love someone that you created and really at the end of the day doesn't exist. And he learned that the hard way. So we have the interrogation with Topher. I wanted to touch on Topher's arrogance, and we hit on it a little bit with Ivy, but I think that we really saw the smug nerd hat guy come out, the IT guy, the one we all know that comes in and when you're having problems with your computer and goes, did you try turning it on and turning it off? You know what I mean?
100% chance Topher has used that line.
Right. I'm surprised they didn't with the dolls. You know what I mean? Like, have you tried turning it on and turning it off? But we also see how much in love with his job he is for the access that he has and the free reign that he has, and how proud of himself he is, right? Like, he really likes himself. He thinks he's the smartest person in the room. He is sure of it, right? And I kind of get that, because I'm a smart person. And I get that smart person arrogance. But he takes it way too far. He takes it to the point where it's openly hostile and rude. You know what I mean?
And dismissive. But you have to wonder how much of that arrogance is based in truth. How much of his, like, I'm smarter than everyone in the room, is because he is actually smarter than everyone else in the room.
Oh, for sure.
And how much of his kind of, the dismissal is bad. He needs to stop that. But how much of his kind of, I'm the king of the nerds thing is because he's rubbish at literally everything else. Right. But this one thing, he is probably the best in the world at.
Well, and he was probably surrounded by guys that were the same way, one-upping each other, and I'm smarter than you are. So when you get in a room with people that, except for Ivy, who says that she could take apart the whole lab and put it back together and he would never know it. Like, she says she's in her way letting him know I am as smart as he is, but he won't let me grow. He's too invested in his own intellect. He's ingenious. To make me a partner, to make me equal or an actual helper. I'm the coffee girl, right?
I have to wonder about that, though. Do you think he just doesn't kind of acknowledge her intellect? Or do you think he's afraid that if the Dollhouse and Adelle realise that Eliza is just as good as him, but nowhere near as annoying, he would just end up in the attic?
I think it's...
How much of his dismissal is just him being an arrogant douche, and how much of it is him trying to protect his job?
I think it's almost 100% arrogant douche. I think he thinks he's irreplaceable, and I think he thinks that she will screw something up because he hasn't given her a chance. And if you don't give someone a chance, you don't know what they're capable of.
Indeed.
So, and if you'll notice, whenever she's in the show and something goes wrong, he looks at her first, like, what did you do? Like, what have you been messing in? This is not my fault. This is your fault. Even when it is his fault. So finally, we have the part where it's revealed that it's Ivy that's the spy. And, that they start getting her corralled and prepping her for the attic. And then the tables turn. And it was all a game. And it's actually Lawrence Dominic that is the NSA agent.
Was anyone actually surprised by that reveal?
I knew it was coming, and I didn't know the first time. I thought it was going to be Boyd. I actually did think it was Boyd. Just because of, how, he has that line that we'll talk about later in quotes, but, he's always been ambivalent about the Dollhouse. He always has moral quandaries, about what they do and how they do it. So, I can be a little naive, like, well, of course it's him. Look at how he's acting, So Dominic seemed to so clearly relish his domineering security job, and maybe it was just overcompensation, that I never suspected him when I first watched it. So when it happened, I was like, holy crap.
From the moment in the one where he tries to kill her in the burning building.
Yeah, at the cult, right? Was that the one at the cult?
What's the episode called? Yeah. It should have been called Blind Faith. That's a great name.
And a tip to the hat to Eliza.
Exactly. But no, in from the moment he sort of left her to die in a burning building in that episode, I've really had my eye on him. So
yeah,
although he does seem to really relish his job, but he's such a job's worth. I could see you could do that job anywhere, but in this, he seems so disdainful of the dolls and of everyone at that company,
almost to the point of verbally abusive to them, because he just, they're beneath contempt. But then you look at what's going on, and he's of course just playing a role, and I should have picked up on it earlier, that his absolute hard on to get Echo out of the system. He was because she found him out.
He's obsessed with her. She did. That was a brilliant scene.
Because you unholstered your gun 20 seconds ago, or unstrapped, and it was like, well, that's on like Simon Le Bon, man.
I met him once. Yeah, sorry. He draws the gun and they throw down, and it's a pretty solid fight. I did enjoy that fight.
That is a great fight scene. That is an awesome fight scene. And I can tell Eliza did a lot of the body work, because you don't see the kind of in Buffy, I can tell when Sarah Michelle said no more, right? To the point that they even recorded her grunting, right? And you could hear it again and again in the final seasons, right? The exact same grunts and oohs and ahs. But I guess Eliza likes to tumble, because you could tell she was doing, not the super complicated stuff, but she was in it.
Yeah. I mean, it seemed like quite a lot of that was just the two of them really throwing down. The only, obviously, the massive, totally over the top, completely impossible spin kick that Dominic did. That was clearly not him. The guy was like about 50 pounds smaller.
Right.
But other than that, was the only part I saw that was like, that's clearly not. But the rest of it looked like it was them.
Yeah,
I was quite impressed by how much they threw down in that.
Yeah, I was waiting for her to just chuck him out the window.
Oh, that would have been so good. But then we wouldn't have been able to see him get atticked.
Yeah, so
which is something that's been spoken about quite a lot, but not
right. So we never see it in action.
shown.
But before we get to that, Adelle comes back. Like, I don't know how she knew to come back. I don't think her whole weekend was over yet. I think she broke it off early. That was my sense anyway. And she came back, and after you were done seeing her be vulnerable, she turns into, the Iron Lady again. And it's even more than I'm used to seeing her. Like, her telling Dominic that, he was at her side for 3 years and all this kind of stuff. And, you would think you would know who I am. Do you think I'm going to show you mercy? Her eyebrows are brutal in that. And then when she passes the final judgment on him and walks out, again with her Louboutins, click, 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 click. I was just like, oh.
Like, usually she's kind of quite reserved and steely, but that was just ice cold.
Right.
That was like next level.
That was so very British infuriated mode, right?
Yeah. When you're so angry, you can't even be angry. You're just like, nope, I am done with this. You are dead to me. Bye.
Just bad. Again, like much like the scene with Paul and Mellie, this scene, you just, I was there for it, right? I was like, I could watch these two go back and forth all day, right?
Yeah, like the chemistry between Adelle and Dominic is just spot on. There's never a bad scene with those two talking to each other.
And they're the two strongest. I mean, except for Harry
Lennox.
They're the two strongest actors on the show, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
And Reed Diamond's done Shakespeare, did the Shakespeare movie with Joss. And, Olivia Williams is just Olivia Williams. Like, I'm surprised more people don't know who she is, because I've seen her in every British costume drama ever, right? And she's just a monster. Like, I am sure when they cut from that scene, people are just like, yeah, like on the crew.
I know exactly what happened. They were filming that scene, and they're like, okay, great, and cut. And then there was just nothing for about 2 seconds. Right. And then one person was like, dude. And then everyone exploded.
Right. So Adelle addicts Dominic, and we get the whole scene that loops back to the front, because the beginning, we went right into the show with somebody being addicted. We didn't know who it was, and then there was a shot, and blood splattered against the window that was from the perspective of Echo and Sierra on the floor of the dollhouse. So we now are back into that. Again, we've jumped back in the timeline, and it's Dominic being addict. And I would think they would have a better place to addict somebody, but I guess it all goes on in the lab. So they get him in the chair. He somehow, no one figured out he had another firearm on him.
Did he not take that from one of the handlers?
Did he? I didn't notice. It was so frenetic.
I thought he grabbed it from one of the handlers.
I didn't see that. Okay, so that's what happened. Shoots Adelle. Adelle, ice cold, standing there bleeding, like, do it. And they flip the switch, and Mr. Dominic is gone. He is addict.
Channeled her inner Palpatine.
Yep. Just cold. Cold.
And then that scene afterwards where she's talking with Topher, and he's like, you're still bleeding. Why are you talking to me? Go see Saunders. So good.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah.
And then they discussed Echo and how that this evolution that Echo seems to keep having, how the needs strategy that Dr. Saunders employed hasn't seemed to work with her, and that she's still looking to save people or to help people and stuff like that. And so then this is where it goes a little off the rails for me. They're like, well, maybe we can use that to your advantage. And I'm like, no, that is a huge mistake. Do not do that.
Yeah.
Like this is a scenario you don't understand. You can't control it, right? Like, that's not the way I would have gone with that. If I was Adelle, I would have been like, we got to figure out how to wipe her good.
Yeah.
Like, so that we don't still have this.
100% agree. Yeah. They are asking for trouble. They know that if they get a composite event, it can go horrifically wrong. It can go alpha wrong. And they're looking at Echo and they're seeing her starting to like recall things and starting to act in a decidedly undoll way when she's meant to be a doll.
I mean, Dominic said it, exhibiting same alpha behaviors. Like, you know.
I don't understand why they don't just, like, maybe not attic her, but, like, just completely strip out all the firmware and rebuild her right up from nothing, because...
And maybe they've tried it and it didn't work, but I feel like, you know, the worst case scenario, put her personality back and let her walk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Although I suppose they don't want Carolyn back, so...
Yeah. So... They have that conversation, and then the last, well, not the last thing, it's not the last scene, but the last thing Adelle says to Topher is that Miss Lonely Hearts doesn't want Roger anymore, and that personality is to be shelved. Because the client felt that the meetings were unwise. So...
I did notice I think it's actually in the scene after that when she's talking to Saunders, when she says the line about kind of it not being required anymore, and she looks out and she's staring right at Victor as she says it. So, there's clearly still some underlying issues there.
So that last scene, the eye lines are super interesting because, of course, they're imprinting Echo with her new handler because Boyd's been promoted to head of security because, you know, Dominic's addict. And he doesn't want it. And she's like, too bad. It's yours, you know. So when the new handler is reading the lines to her and she's supposed to look him in the eye, she's looking dead at Boyd.
I've got to say, I thought that was a really sweet scene. Like they're not quite OTP status, but I love the relationship between Echo and Boyd.
I do too. I think Harry Lennox is amazing, and I think that relationship was fleshed out really well. I'm not with you on sweet. I think it's a little, I mean, I get the loyalty that she has for him and she's holding on, but it's another sign that Echo is problematic because she's not taking her programming. She's not bonding with her handler. I mean, you know, poor guy.
Who I believe never comes back to the show. Yeah. Is he even seen again?
I believe that's Nicodin that we talked about in the guest star. And I don't remember seeing him again. Now I could be wrong, but yeah, she, you know, sometimes I'm like, these dolls are obviously malfunctioning, you know, all over the place. And everybody's like, are you done with your artwork, Echo? You can leave. Like, there's some, like you said, there's some red flags that, you know, they should probably be followed up on. But God, that was a good discussion.
It was. It's a good episode. But I believe we are now moving on to favourite quotes. There are, I believe I have a couple. Do you want to start us off while I find my list of quotes?
While you find your quotes. Okay, so when they're doing the interrogations, Echo is talking to Boyd, who is her handler, and he knows it, but she doesn't because she's got an imprint, and something about what they do at the Dollhouse, and he's like, "We're pimps and killers, but in a philanthropic way. Can I go now?"
Yeah, that was a great one.
And I think the other one, when Dominic's in the back of the van, and we really didn't touch on that, but they were taking him to be addict, and he's sitting in the van, just grinning like a Cheshire cat, backed up against the doors, and Echo is still imprinted, and she's sitting in there talking to him, and she doesn't understand why he's smiling. He doesn't, you know, don't you know what's going to happen to you? And he goes on to say, well, you know, you're going to take this whole place down, and they don't even know it yet. And he says, sooner or later, everyone gets theirs. And you know, people say that a lot and stuff, but I thought it was really effective in this use.
I meant to add that one to the list, but I forgot. So I'm very glad that you put that one forward, because that was a brilliant line. That was basically kind of Dominic's last line, and it's, what a way to go out. Like, yeah, I may be in the attic now, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna lose in the long run. Like, sooner or later they'll realise I'm right. I went for a slightly funnier lines, but
good,
still very cool. From right at the start, when Mr. Lonely Hearts is going out and she's coming in as the dominatrix and she's talking to Ramirez, and Roger is like, oh, she got a secret stack of bodice rippers in the van. And he's like, no, I don't. Because she wants to be kidnapped by a pirate. And Echo just chips in, I know a guy. Like, we can make that happen. So funny. Like if you told me that was an ad lib, I would 100% have believed it. The way she just like chips it in there, it's just so brilliantly delivered. It's such a good line. So funny. But then when Ivy is practicing the post-wipe script, and said, no, it has to be less. And then Dominic just butting goes, Echo, out. It has to be less that. It's such a good line. Just shows Dominic's disdain and Topher's hilarity.
When he goes to get Sierra and just yanks her by her arms, like, come on. Like, I'm just like, God, what a prick.
Yeah. All the handlers are like, it's all very much kind of like New Age rehab center. It's all very calm, soothing tone. And Dominic's like, Sierra, get up and get out of there. It's like, fucking hell, calm down.
Right, don't manhandle the dolls.
And then my absolute favourite line of the series, of the episode, just so good. We've kind of touched on it, but we haven't said the actual line. When he's digging around and he's trying to kind of work out, and Echo walks in, and he's like, I can help you. Why would you want to? Why wouldn't I? And Topher just pauses for a second and goes, did I just lose an argument with a doll? So good. It's like, he is off, he's kind of in that area where he is clearly incredibly intelligent, but he does miss, like, he's not all knowing. He messes up quite a bit. And it's like, did I just lose to a doll?
Like, why can't I answer this argument? Like, I have an answer for everything. So, final thoughts on this episode for me are that it was really strong episode. The strongest part of it for me was like I keep saying, the interaction between, two characters and kind of these subtext philosophical arguments. And I want to say ironic, but then I think back to
the bed scene.
Roger saying, well, that's not ironic. Everybody messes that up. But the
funniest part of that scene is that it actually is an ironic situation, but he just doesn't realize it because he doesn't know he's a doll, which makes it even more ironic.
That whole scene is so meta and Inception and irony for the sake of irony. It's on like 3 levels going up and down constantly. So I feel like Andrew Chambliss is one of my favorite writers, and he's worked with Joss a lot. And I think that the script on this just hits. It's just great. Because Dollhouse is so far-fetched, yes, there are some ridiculous moments, but I think it falls back in line as being not as strong as Man on the Street, but damn close. Because just of what they're letting you know, the attic is real now. November has, shown Paul that the mole is real, that they're not just jacking with him, and that there are people trying to get into the dollhouse in the government, right? And I'm not even sure I understood why Dominic said that they were going to collapse upon themselves. So was the NSA in there to help them or hurt them? That was a huge question for me coming out of it. But by the time it was over, I was like, I'm ready to watch the next one, because that was good. Like, sometimes you get done with them, and especially the early ones, and you're like, I don't know about this show. It's not firing on all the pistons, but this one for the most part was super solid.
Yep, I totally agree. I don't know why I said it in the sort of initial thoughts. I just kind of blanked this episode from my memory, and I think it's because there's so many great moments. My brain was like, you know what? I'm gonna give you a little treat. I'm gonna just take the important part out so you can experience them a second time. Because there's so many brilliant moments in this scene. There's so many like great scenes, so many great lines. It's a very, very strong episode that you wouldn't, like, reading the synopsis, you wouldn't think it's going to be as good as it is. But like, this show is incredibly layered, and this has to be one of the most layered episodes they deliver. I'd say kind of almost this, it's like highlights just what's so great about the show, because like it illustrates kind of how meta the show is, how great the writing is, how great the characters are. It has everything you could want from an episode. It even has a decent fight scene. Like, what more could you ask for?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like when this show is at its best, it's when it's examining itself. When it is not trying to go off and be episode of the week and, solve this problem within 42 minutes. And that was the problem with the first 5-6 episodes was that, and I'm sure this is from network tinkering. I'm sure of it.
100%.
Because it's the same thing they did to Firefly. That they wanted to make it episodic and, crime of the week and, make Eliza's storyline more accessible, which if you want that, make a CSI show. Don't give a show to Joss. That's not what he does, right? And
exactly.
And if you tell him to try and do something else, he's not good at it.
True Believer. That's what the episode's called in the cult.
Yes. Blind Faith is better, you're right.
It is, yeah. But yeah, 100% agree. Like, people accuse Joss of always kind of doing the same thing, and that's because he's really freaking good at it. He delivers great shows.
Yeah.
I don't understand why Fox kept messing with him. Like, one of the reasons why the first 5-ish episodes are so weak is because, like, although I would say rewatching them now and really analysing them for the show, like, there's some good breadcrumbs there, but it's too episodic. They should have let him just build the story the way he wanted to from day one. And actually, I think when we come to season 2, I do really believe that the diminished budget actually really helped the show.
Absolutely.
And I'll talk about it more when we actually get to season 2.
Yeah, them being anchored at that big, expensive set and having to use it so much was problematic. I think Eliza especially was anchored into roles in the first 5 or 6 episodes that were not good for her. Just not comfortable in her skin, and she came out a little wooden. And I think that did nothing to help power the show forward. And by the time the show got good, the ratings were super questionable. Now, the interesting thing is, if this was now, these ratings would be great. These would be acceptable ratings. But back then, no. All right. Well, as always, thanks to our Patreon friends. The next show is entitled Haunted. When Adelle's wealthy friend is murdered, Adelle imprints Echo with the woman's memories and personality to solve the case. Ballard looks into Mellie's past, and Topher secretly programs Sierra for an engagement. So until then, stay active.